Marie Belcastro was the kind of woman who made a lasting impression on everyone she met. In the small, tight-knit town of Clay, New York, her name was synonymous with warmth, kindness, and unwavering dedication. To those who knew her, Marie was more than just a neighbor. She was a comforting presence, a beacon of light in a community that thrived on familiarity and trust. Each morning, Marie could be seen walking the quiet streets of Clay, her soft smile greeting familiar faces. The gentle way she spoke, the care she showed toward others, these were the marks of a woman who lived her life quietly, but with profound purpose. She was a devoted mother who nurtured her children's dreams with unwavering support, a loving wife who held her family close despite the challenges that simmered beneath the surface, and a dedicated employee at the local school cafeteria, where she spent years feeding the town's youngest and watching them grow. Marie's life was simple, but deeply meaningful. Born and raised in Clay, she embodied the town's values: loyalty to family, respect for community, and a tireless work ethic that was both admired and relied upon. Neighbors spoke of her soft-spoken nature and her remarkable ability to make anyone feel welcome, whether through a kind word, a knowing glance, or just her quiet presence. She was a cornerstone of her family, her two children the very heart of her existence, and she carried the weight of those roles with quiet grace and determination. But beneath the gentle exterior, there was a darkness few could see, a reality hidden behind closed doors. For Marie, life was beginning to unravel in ways that none of her friends or neighbors could have imagined. The peace of the town was about to be shattered, and the lives of those who loved her would never be the same again. In the months leading up to her disappearance, those closest to Marie began to notice subtle, unsettling changes. The woman who had once greeted everyone she met with a warm, cheerful smile, the same smile that could brighten the dullest days, was slowly retreating into herself. Her eyes, once lively and welcoming, now carried a heavy sadness, a silent pain that seemed impossible to put into words. At the local school cafeteria, where Marie had worked for years, her steady presence began to waver. Co-workers exchanged concerned whispers behind closed doors, puzzled by her increasingly frequent absences. It wasn't like Marie to miss work without explanation. Her spot behind the lunch line, so familiar to students and staff alike, was suddenly vacant on multiple occasions. The usual chatter about the day's menu gave way to hushed speculation. Was Marie ill? Was something happening at home? Friends who reached out to check on her were met with vague responses, short texts, delayed replies, and an unmistakable distance that left them worried but unsure how to help. Marie's usual warmth was replaced by cold politeness or silence. It was as if she was carrying a burden too heavy to share, locking away her struggles behind carefully closed doors. As night fell over the quiet town of Clay, the once peaceful Belcastro home became a source of unease for some neighbors. On more than one occasion, hushed voices spilled into the night air, sharp, clipped tones that shattered the usual calm. Arguments, barely audible but charged with tension, echoed through the walls. Those who lived nearby caught fragments of raised voices, an edge of anger, frustration, and despair. And then, as suddenly as they began, the arguments would cease, replaced by an oppressive silence that hung thick in the air, as if everyone inside was holding their breath. No one knew exactly what was happening behind those closed doors, but it was clear that something was terribly wrong. One of Marie's closest friends, a woman who had known her since childhood, shared a heartbreaking glimpse into what Marie was enduring. In broken, hesitant conversations, Marie had confided in her, not in full, but in scattered pieces. She spoke of feeling trapped, overwhelmed by fear she could barely name. Frustration gnawed at her, and loneliness settled deep in her bones, despite being surrounded by family and friends. Her social media posts only added to the mystery, cryptic phrases and somber reflections hinting at anxiety and stress. Words like "too much to bear" and "running out of strength" appeared in moments of vulnerability, but were quickly deleted or left unexplained. To the outside world, these were just fleeting glimpses, but to those paying attention, they were silent cries for help that went unanswered. Then came the day that no one in Clay could have ever anticipated. The day Marie did not return home. It began like any other morning. Marie's absence from the breakfast table was unusual, but not immediately alarming. Yet as the hours slipped by, a growing unease settled over her family. She failed to show up for work at the school cafeteria, a place where she had been a fixture for years. Co-workers waited and wondered, but with no message or call, concern began to deepen. Family members reached for their phones, dialing her number again and again. But each time the call went unanswered. No voice, no message, no sign that she was safe. The hours stretched into an agonizing silence, each minute heavier than the last. Marie Belcastro, her husband of over 2 decades, broke the news with a calmness that felt unsettling rather than reassuring. He told relatives and friends that Marie had stepped out for a walk and simply hadn't come back. His words were measured, his tone steady. But beneath that calm, a chill of doubt rippled through those who heard him. Questions buzzed silently in the minds of those who loved Marie. Where had she gone? Why hadn't she contacted anyone? And most terrifyingly, was she okay? The tight-knit community of Clay sprang into action. Neighbors banded together, forming search parties that fanned out across the streets, parks, and wooded areas surrounding the town. Flyers bearing Marie's picture appeared on every lamppost and bulletin board, each one a plea for answers. Authorities were alerted without delay. Police officers arrived swiftly, their faces grim and focused. Teams moved through the Belcastro home with careful precision, searching for any clue that could explain her sudden disappearance. They combed the nearby woods, calling out her name into the dense silence, hoping for a sign, any sign, of where she might be. The town held its breath as the hours turned into days, the mystery of Marie's whereabouts casting a shadow over the community that refused to lift. After days of desperate searching, the hope that had held the community together began to crumble. Then, in a remote, densely wooded area just outside the outskirts of Clay, Marie's body was discovered. A haunting confirmation of the worst fears that had silently plagued everyone's minds. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town, ripping through the fragile threads of hope and plunging everyone into a deep collective grief. The place where she was found was eerily quiet, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to close in, as if nature itself mourned the loss. Police cordoned off the area, turning the peaceful woods into a solemn crime scene filled with flashing lights and hushed voices. Forensic experts worked meticulously, piecing together the final moments of Marie's life from the physical evidence left behind. Their findings painted a tragic and brutal picture. Signs of a violent struggle were evident. Bruises that marred her skin, defensive wounds on her arms, and marks that spoke of desperation and resistance. It was clear that Marie had fought fiercely, a silent testament to her will to survive. The scene told a story of a confrontation that had spiraled out of control, ending in a heartbreaking and senseless death. The brutality contrasted sharply with the gentle woman the town had known, leaving many struggling to reconcile the image of the loving mother and neighbor with the horror of what had happened. As news of the discovery spread, Clay was left reeling, shocked, saddened, and searching for answers. How could someone so beloved have met such a violent fate? Who could have committed such an unthinkable act? The questions hung heavily in the air as the investigation intensified, the community united in grief but desperate for justice. From the very outset, investigators zeroed in on those closest to Marie. In many cases like this, the hardest truth is that danger often lurks not in strangers, but within the walls of one's own home. George Belcastro's name quickly emerged as the primary suspect, a man whose presence now cast a long, dark shadow over the entire community. Neighbors who once casually waved at George now spoke in hushed tones about the man they thought they knew. To many, he was a man with a volatile temper and a controlling nature. While outright physical violence had rarely been witnessed by the public eye, rumors of a toxic and troubled marriage circulated quietly. Those who had glimpsed the private struggles between George and Marie painted a picture of a woman who walked on eggshells, desperate to keep the peace, often silencing her pain to avoid confrontation. Several neighbors recalled late nights when Marie appeared tense or withdrawn, and sometimes even fearful. Some mentioned seeing her attempting to placate George during arguments, while others spoke of times when she simply vanished for hours, as if escaping an unbearable reality. It was becoming painfully clear. Marie may have been trapped in a cycle of fear and control, hiding a suffering that few understood. Detectives wasted no time. They began interviewing friends, family members, colleagues, and acquaintances. Each conversation peeling back layers of secrecy surrounding the Belcastro household. With every testimony, a more complex and fractured relationship came into focus. The emotional and psychological toll on Marie was undeniable. Years of tension, isolation, and fear had worn her down. Meanwhile, forensic teams examined physical evidence inside the Belcastro home. Items were carefully cataloged and analyzed, revealing discrepancies between George's account and the reality the evidence portrayed. Blood spatter, broken objects, and signs of struggle pointed toward a violent confrontation. Investigators also reviewed surveillance footage from nearby streets and homes. The video captured moments that contradicted George's timeline. Gaps and unexplained absences in his story raised further suspicion. Additionally, phone records showed calls and messages that conflicted with his statements, adding another layer of doubt. The mounting inconsistencies painted a troubling portrait, one of a man struggling to maintain a facade while the truth edged closer to the surface. Weeks later, after painstaking investigation and careful gathering of evidence, the police made the decisive move. George Belcastro was arrested and formally charged with the second-degree murder of his wife, Marie. The news rippled through the small town of Clay like a shockwave, shaking the very foundation of the community. George was a man many had known for years, a familiar face at neighborhood gatherings, a presence that once commanded respect and trust. The revelation that he could be capable of such unspeakable cruelty was almost too much for some to bear. Whispers spread from doorsteps to local diners. How could someone so close, so seemingly ordinary, commit a crime so horrific? The disbelief mingled with sorrow and anger, fracturing the calm that had once defined the town. As the case moved into the courtroom, the town's eyes were fixed on the unfolding drama. The trial became a harrowing battleground of truth and deception, where every detail was scrutinized under the unforgiving light of justice. Prosecutors presented their case methodically, calling witnesses who recounted the dark realities behind the closed doors of the Belcastro household. They laid bare the timeline of abuse, the chilling evidence, and the heartbreak of a family torn apart. Meanwhile, the defense sought to cast doubt, challenging the investigation and painting a different picture, one of uncertainty and conflicting motives. The courtroom was thick with tension, emotions running high as both sides fought for their version of the truth. For the community, the trial was more than just a legal proceeding. It was a painful reckoning with the reality that evil can exist anywhere, even in the homes we think are safest. During the trial, the prosecution methodically laid out a compelling and harrowing case against George Belcastro. They presented a mountain of evidence, each piece carefully selected to construct a chilling narrative of guilt. Forensic experts took the stand, their testimonies rich with detail. They described the physical evidence with clinical precision, the bruises and defensive wounds on Marie's body, the DNA traces found beneath her fingernails, and the blood spatter patterns inside the Belcastro home that told the story of a violent and desperate struggle. These scientific facts painted a grim picture that was difficult to refute. Witnesses testified next, giving voice to the fears and pain that had long remained hidden. Friends, neighbors, and family members recounted Marie's growing fear in the months before her death. Some spoke of the subtle but unmistakable signs of abuse, the way she flinched at sudden movements, her reluctance to speak about her home life, the quiet withdrawal from social circles. Many expressed regret for not recognizing the warning signs sooner, their words heavy with sorrow. Psychologists and domestic violence experts were called to explain the dynamics of control and fear that often keep victims trapped in abusive relationships. Their expert insights helped the jury understand Marie's silence and the tragic inevitability of the violence that ended her life. On the defense side, George's attorneys worked hard to undermine the prosecution's case. They questioned the reliability of witnesses, suggested alternative explanations for the forensic evidence, and tried to plant seeds of doubt about the investigation's thoroughness. They argued that no direct eyewitness could place George at the scene during the time of the murder, attempting to create uncertainty in the minds of the jurors. Yet, despite these efforts, the jury remained unconvinced. The weight of the evidence was overwhelming, and the testimony painted a consistent and heartbreaking picture of abuse and fatal violence. After days of tense deliberations, the courtroom was filled with anticipation as the jury returned with their verdict. George Belcastro was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge handed down a lengthy prison sentence, underscoring the gravity of the crime and the need for justice. The verdict brought a measure of closure to a grieving community, but the pain of Marie's loss would linger. For her children, family, and friends, it was a bittersweet moment. Justice served, but at a cost that could never be repaid. Marie's death left an emptiness in the hearts of those who loved her, a void that no words or time could ever fully heal. Her children, once cradled in her warmth and care, were suddenly left without the guiding presence of their mother. The loss was profound and palpable, echoing through the quiet halls of their home and the wider community. In the weeks and months that followed, the people of Clay rallied around the family. Neighbors, friends, and local leaders came together, offering support, love, and protection to Marie's children. They recognized that while justice had been served in the courtroom, healing was only just beginning. Counseling services were arranged, community groups stepped in, and a network of care grew around the young ones, determined to shield them from further pain. Marie's story also sparked something powerful beyond the immediate circle of grief. Local organizations and advocacy groups, moved by the tragedy, launched awareness campaigns focused on domestic violence, shining a light on a hidden epidemic that often goes unnoticed behind closed doors. Through workshops, public talks, and outreach programs, they sought to educate the community about the signs of abuse and the resources available for those in need. Marie's life and untimely death became a symbol, a stark reminder of the silent suffering many endure in silence, trapped by fear and stigma. Her story fueled a plea for vigilance, compassion, and action, urging everyone to listen more carefully, to intervene when they suspect danger, and to never ignore the quiet cries for help. In schools, workplaces, and community centers, Marie's legacy inspired conversations that might otherwise never have happened. It galvanized a commitment to building safer environments where victims feel empowered to speak out and seek support without shame or fear. Though Marie could no longer speak for herself, her story spoke volumes, a call to a community, a state, and a nation to confront the realities of domestic violence and to stand united against it. Marie Belcastro's life was one defined by love, kindness, and quiet strength. She was a woman who gave everything to her family and community, embodying the very best of human compassion. But behind the warmth and smiles, her tragic death exposed a harsh and heartbreaking truth: the hidden dangers that can lurk behind closed doors, often unseen and unspoken. Her story serves as a stark and urgent reminder that domestic violence is a silent predator, capable of destroying lives swiftly and without warning. It reveals how abuse can wear down even the strongest, how fear and shame can trap victims in a cycle of suffering that many never fully understand. Marie's fate compels us all to listen more carefully, not just to words, but to the quiet signals of pain and distress that so often go unnoticed. It challenges us to look beyond appearances, beyond the surface of seemingly ordinary lives, and to recognize when someone may be in danger. More importantly, it calls on us to act, to intervene, to offer support, and to ensure that no cry for help goes unanswered. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, remember this: you are not alone. Speak out. Reach out to trusted friends, family members, or professionals who can provide guidance and protection. There are local support services and national hotlines ready to help, offering safe spaces, advice, and resources. No one should ever have to suffer in silence or face violence alone. Together, as a community, we have the power to honor Marie's memory by building safer, stronger environments where every voice is heard, every story matters, and everyone's well-being is protected. Let her story be a catalyst for change, inspiring awareness, compassion, and action so that future tragedies can be prevented and lives can be saved. Let us carry her legacy forward by standing united against domestic violence, fostering hope where there was fear and healing where there was pain.